5 years. It had been 5 years since Maya had seen a group like this in action, and then she was within it. Being in the group was like being a rabbit, snug, inside your warren with the others around you. When she moved amongst the shadows, her blade tucked in her cloak tight around her, she finally knew what it was like to be part of a family.
Some of this won't make sense because it can't. You have no frame of reference, and you have nothing but a vague idea of what an upbringing like this is like, but I'll try my best. When I told you I grew up in the Arkansas hills, I wasn't lying. I also told you that my parents died in a car crash, and that was a lie. In reality, I grew up in the Green Hills trailer park with my mother and my father.
Maya ran her tongue over her suddenly dry lips. Just thinking about that place made her sweat.
However you're imagining this trailer park, you aren't even close. It was a place for the loggers in the area to come home and sleep before it was time to go back to the woods. The hours were long, the work hard, and my dad came home smelling of wood pulp and sweat, wood shavings always in his hair. I was an only child, thankfully, and I had not been wanted. My mother was a drug addict that Dad had begun dating after he moved here. She was an unfit mother. They were unfit parents, and her drug problem soon became Dad's drug problem. They never hid it from me. They didn't take their dirty doings into the bathroom and do them in secret. I would come home from school to find one or both of them on the couch, their eyes bleary and their heads against their shoulders, watching something on the tiny little TV we had in the living room. If I was lucky, this would be a sleepy night. They would sit on the couch in a daze, just watching TV and giggling. I would go make myself dinner and take it to my room, staying as quiet as I could until I put myself to bed for the night. Those nights were good. I liked those nights.
She looked around at her assembled friends, their faces concerned and their attention held. Connor sat up, his knees under his arms, and Lena was already looking wet-eyed on the verge of tears. Jack was trying to be stoic, but he clearly wanted to take her hand or put an arm around her. This wasn't something that she had ever admitted to anyone, and just having them near her seemed to give her strength.
On bad nights, I would come home to find angry parents who had questions I couldn't answer and beatings I barely survived. My father was not a kind man, and the drugs made him angry. I made him angry, it seemed, and he often took out his aggression on me. I was so young, I couldn't fight them off, so I learned to hide. I didn't have any friends. Friends just complicated things, and I found that no one really wanted to be my friend anyway. I was the girl in the dirty clothes with the frizzy hair, the one who smelled because she was too afraid to make noise taking a shower some nights. No one wanted to be my friend, and I suppose that was okay. I kept the secret, and it kept other people from getting involved.
Maya sat upright, suddenly listening. She had heard something. Soft feet, or the scuff of shoes perhaps. She didn't know what it could be, but her senses were still tuned up to 1,000,000 as she listened for what she thought she should already be hearing. They should have found them already. They should have been dead, but Maya wasn't going to question good fortune.
It was like that for years, and I had to grow up pretty quickly and learn to cover my bruises, both with long sleeves and my mother's makeup. I learned to be quiet, to move unseen, and it kept me from catching beatings more often. I suppose I was training to be a shadow even before I knew what they were. I was already a ghost, so who would miss me when I was gone?
Maya looked around, wanting to be sure that they understood. She had every eye, and none of them said a word the whole time. They were wrapped around her every word, and she almost laughed at them. This wasn't even the most interesting part. There was so much more to come. They had no idea what they were in for.
The shadows had been watching me for a long time. I don't know exactly how long, but he told me that it had been since I was very young.
He?
Lena asked.
Who is he?
Maya wet her lips again, unable to say his name.
The director, the head of the organization. He finds people, poor, unfortunate souls who can be manipulated and used by him. He has so many shadows and so many knives at his disposal. I came home one day to find a strange car in the front yard. I was afraid. I'd seen the way my dad's friends looked at me sometimes, and I was scared that Dad had finally seen it too. I wanted to run away, but I knew I didn't have anywhere else to go. I went inside, and there he was, sitting in my drab trailer living room like some beautiful creature just walking around in the open. My dad told me that I was going with him, that he had bought me, and I was his now. I was 16, old enough to have fought back if I hadn't wanted to go, but I just nodded and stood there like a statue. I didn't know where we were going, but I knew it was better than here. No matter where it was, it would be better than here. My mom was passed out, and I wondered if Dad had even told her what he was doing. She wouldn't have cared. She was as responsible for my situation as he was, and as I left with the man, I was happy. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew it was better than that trailer and being afraid.
She listened, but she didn't hear anything. They had time.
When we were inside his car, he told me that he knew what sort of life I had lived, and he wouldn't let that happen again. He said, "I'll teach you to be strong. I'll teach you to be silent, and I'll teach you to be a true shadow." He told the truth. In all my time with the organization, the director never lied to me. For the first year, he taught me the tricks of the trade. I learned the knife, the wire, the dart, the whistling blades. He taught me how to move as silent as any shadow. I learned how to disguise myself, how to move without being noticed, how to read the scripts and memorize their layout. Sometimes I would close my eyes while I was on a mission, navigate the sets with just the memory of those floor plans. I was good at it. I was one of the best, and he knew it.
Wait,
Jack said.
You called them sets. Why?
Because that's what he always called them. These places aren't houses to him. The people they hunt aren't human beings, and what he does isn't murder. It's all a show to him. You go to the set, you conduct a slash, you kill the extras, and the director is pleased. They don't consider themselves serial killers. They consider themselves artists. Some of them don't even know what they're doing because they've deluded themselves that much. I was like that once. The organization was my family. We were just following orders. But 5 years ago, the veil was pulled away, and I saw what I was actually doing.
5 years ago. That was when she had found herself in one of those houses that the director had ordered the slash in. She told them the story, but in her head, Maya was living it all over again. 38 North Shore, the house in the middle of the cul-de-sac. There was a sleepover going on inside. Teenage girls in bright pajamas who were gossiping and giggling as they sat in front of the TV in the living room. Maya could see them. 8 kids between the ages of 17 and 18, and one adult in her early 40s. The father worked nights. He would be the one to find the aftermath when he came home at 6 a.m. They had 8 hours to do the deed, to arrange the bodies, and get clear. They would need to be quick. They would need to be silent, and they would need to leave no witnesses to bring help either.
"Sun is setting,"
Darek had said into her ear. Darek was around the side of the house. Another blade was around the side near the power box, and no less than 8 shadows were sitting on the roof. Maya had to squint to see them. Their grays blended into the shingles seamlessly, and if you weren't looking for them, they would be utterly invisible. Maya checked her watch, the same one that she was wearing in the real world. 8 o'clock. Time to start.
Kill the lights,
She whispered. Somewhere around the side, one of those silver balls that Maya had used to knock out Darek's comms was set on the power box, and after a count of 5, all the lights in the house suddenly went off. The cell phones in their hands went dead too, and Maya could hear them scream as they tried to figure out what was going on. She was moving before she could really think about it. She knew that Darek was on the move too, and so was the other cutter, James. She remembered his name had been James, and they would be causing a distraction right about now. She smiled as the glass broke on the side of the house, causing the girls inside to scream and jump. The mother was gathering close to them, assuring them that everything would be okay. And as another window shattered, Maya came quickly through the sliding glass door and went into the dark living room. Some of the cutters wore night vision, but Maya found that she didn't need it. She had always seen just fine in the dark, and as one of the girls turned to notice her, Maya smiled behind her porcelain mask. The blade came out and into the girl's throat before she could raise an alarm. Maya had another one down before the others noticed. They screamed then. Oh, how they screamed. But the other cutters were inside by then. The mother tried to protect the girls, but she was easy picking for James's long, curved knives. The other girls scattered, running to the corners of the house, and the cutters were after them. One of them made it out a side door as Maya came into the kitchen, but a shadow dropped onto her, much the same way it had onto Maya in the basement, and dealt with her quickly before bringing her back inside. The shadows were under orders to contain the slash, and they were good at what they did. Behind her, Maya could hear James and Darek as they went to work, finding the scared girls and finishing the slash. Darek always called them lambs or sheep, which was something that irked the director, but he was good at ending them, whatever he called them. Maya followed the subtle sounds of her fleeing extra and found the door to the garage slightly open. The girl wasn't even trying to hide. She was pulling at the edge of the garage door, trying to lift it since the power was out. She wasn't strong enough. She was moaning and crying as she tried to escape, and she never saw Maya stick her in the back. She cried out, falling and trying to crawl away, and when Maya rolled her over, she noticed something an instant after she put a knife in the girl's chest. The bruise on her cheek was nowhere near as bad as the ones that Maya had gotten from her father, but when she looked at the girl, her mouth working silently, she couldn't help but feel some kind of familiar tug. I'm sorry, Daddy." The girl was mouthing it over and over again, and Maya wanted to ask her why she was sorry. She never got the chance though. The girl died right there on the floor of the garage, but as Maya watched her lips stop moving, Maya watched her face suddenly transform into her own. She was her. She was her from 5 years before. She was just a scared girl on the cusp of 17 who didn't know what was going on. She was Maya if she hadn't been raised by people who were barely people. She was just a girl trying to live her life, and Maya had taken it away from her. Suddenly, this girl, lying in Maya's arms in this garage, wasn't an extra. And Maya wondered how many others had been people and not just faceless sacks of meat. How many others had been people with lives and friends and parents who loved them? How many people had she taken that from? And how many people had she ended because the director said it was just a slash? She didn't know when she started running, but she did. She ran from that house, from the blood, from her own family, and by the time she stopped, she didn't know where she was anymore. She kept running, kept moving, and hadn't dared to stop running for 4 years. If she kept moving, kept going, never stopped, then maybe the organization would...
Maya?
She shook her head, realizing that Lena had called her name more than once.
Sorry, it's a lot to relive. Well, after 5 years with no cutters or shadows coming after me, I thought I might be safe. I tried to get work before, but I realized that if I wanted to better myself, I needed to learn something. I knew how to use computers. I knew how to forge things believably. So I got into college and started learning programming and networking and just started bettering myself. Living on campus also made me feel safe, like there was no way they would come after me if I stayed in a place with lots of people. I guess in the end, I was wrong. So that's it. That's the whole story. Now you know all of it. I've been running from the organization, and I have no reason to help them at all. I want to escape them as much as you do, and I want you all to escape with me.
She got up then, disgusted at how long she had been sitting here, but feeling a little better now that it was all out there.
Now, can we go, please? If they've found the other end of this tunnel already, then we'll likely be dead before we get there, but we have to try.
Jack got up, helping Connor to his feet as he nodded.
Well, I guess if we're going to die, we better not keep them waiting.
They knew they were heading for danger, but none of them had any idea what they were getting themselves into. Darek was moving through the woods, Richard moving in his wake, when he put up a hand and called a halt to his companion and those who went unseen.
What?
Richard asked.
You hear something?
Yeah.
Darek said.
It appears we might not be alone.
Richard looked around, concerned.
Like what? A deer? Cougar? Some kind of...
Unless either of them can cock a pistol, I'd say it's human.
He turned left as the man stepped out of the woods. He was in military fatigues, but his patches showed Darek that he was no more military than Darek was. The patches on his uniform made no sense, but Darek was pretty sure he knew what organization this fellow belonged to. You didn't travel in the shadows without discovering they were populated by more things than monsters.
I'm gonna give you one chance to turn around and walk away,
the man said, his voice sounding odd as it came through the vocoder.
You are on private property, owned by the United States government, and I, the warning, will not be.
The throw was lazy, the blade hitting the man in the shoulder and staggering him back as Darek stared at him. Darek didn't really want to kill him. He just didn't like having guns pointed at him. The man fired anyway, but the angle was off and the bullet went wide and into the woods. Darek, however, was not hampered by 4 inches of steel stuck into his shoulder, and when he pressed another knife into the man's throat, he dropped the gun and spread his hands apart.
You aren't a part of my slasher, sheep. So I'm going to ask you once. Why are you in my way?
I triggered a...
But his voice changed as Darek cut the strap on the vocoder and let it drop to the forest floor.
Let's try that again, with a little less synth and a little more normal speech.
I triggered a signal the second I left the listening post. If I don't give a return signal in the next 30 minutes, an airstrike will turn this forest into an inferno.
Darek raised an eyebrow to that.
There must be something pretty important out here, if it was worth risking a forest fire to keep people away from it.
You have no idea.
We know about the cave and the cemetery, but the script was a little foggy about military bases in the Indiana woods.
It's not a base, and you have about 15 minutes before this place is a bonfire. It's a 7-minute walk. So you might want to let me get about it.
Darek nodded.
Well, let's go then. I have a phone call to make anyway, and it sounds like we have some things to discuss.
Darek, that wasn't in the script.
Richard said, and Darek laughed as he put his blade in the man's ribs and told him to lead the way.
Richard, haven't you ever heard of improvising?
The earthen tunnel stretched on forever, pushing into the earth like a searching finger. Maya and her friends navigated it slowly, each twist making her think that it might shift upward and lead to an exit. The longer it went, the more impressed that she was with whoever had dug it. This could not have been easy. It had to have taken weeks or even months to dig this far into the earth, and it would have been made without machinery too, unless she was very much mistaken. She didn't know how the roof stayed up, how the tunnel simply didn't collapse in on itself without struts or posts, but it did.
Feels like we've been walking for hours,
Connor said.
It only feels like that.
Jack told him.
In reality, it's been about 45 minutes.
Well, thanks for the news, Chet.
We have to be past the property line of the house by now.
Lena said.
It almost seems like we're heading for the cave.
Yeah. What's up with this cave anyway? You've been excited to see it ever since we planned this trip.
Well, it's a naturally forming limestone cave that was found beneath a cemetery after it was constructed. The formations inside are supposed to be pretty spectacular. I had read that the Park Service had sealed it off due to some kind of damage, but I was hoping it was open again now.
You don't think that somebody cut their own tunnel, do you?
Connor joked, but no one laughed.
I can only imagine why.
Lena said quietly, more to herself than the others.
The cave is nearly 2 miles from the cabin. He would have to be very committed to make it that far.
Jack ran a hand over the walls.
I'd say whoever did this was committed, or should have been.
The deeper they went, the more Maya noticed the signs of that obsession. She saw broken tools, discarded clothes, signs of desperation that took the form of finger marks on the walls and knee marks in the dirt. And every now and again there was a divot in the dirt floor that Maya thought might be where a desperate man had stopped to sleep when his energy was extinguished. They were frozen in time here, safe from the curious hands of those who might want to move them, and Maya wondered where this desperate excavation might end. She wouldn't have long to wonder. They came out suddenly into a small concrete room. There were caskets on risers, and some of them had cages on them to prevent grave robbers. The door was ripped open, like hinges hanging from a concrete wall, and as Maya looked through the doorway, she could see it sitting in the cemetery. Maya and her friends exited the crypt and looked around at the sprawling cemetery, trying to get their bearings.
This is the place!
Lena said, moving between the tombstone excitedly.
How exactly are we here, though? We would have to go up to the cemetery. How are we just here?
Jack had taken a few steps out when he glanced back and noticed that Maya wasn't with them.
Maya, what's wrong?
He said, going back to her.
Something feels wrong.
Maya said as she looked around, the anxiety wafting off of her.
Can't you feel it?
Jack looked around fitfully, feeling nothing but hearing something. Well, it was more of a lack of something.
It's so quiet.
But he realized it was more than that. It was dead silent.